Today we're going to talk about what it takes to make a CD because I am so excited to actually have my first solo CD in hand. Yay!
All right.
So speaking of that noise that I heard over there, let's say hi to Joe and Darren. Hey guys.
Hello.
Yeah, so this has been really exciting. It's been a long time coming. I've participated in a ton of CD recording projects, but never once where I really saw the project from beginning to end all completely on my own as a solo CD. I've done CDs with Southwest Chamber Music and with all different kinds of organizations, and they've all been fantastic, and I've been honored to be a part of them and Grammy nominated and all that great stuff. But to actually have a solo CD is a completely different, ball game, ball of wax. So what we thought we'd do today is kind of have like an interactive session with Darren and Joe and talking about like questions that anybody has and how the process all comes about. So anyway, first of all, this is what it looks like. I think Joe has the cover to show you. I'll tell you a little bit about it. The CD is entitled Dancing on the Head of a Pin, which is a phrase that you hear quite a bit. It's a phrase that's used. It's kind of a common type thing. It's also a phrase that's in one of the Billy Collins poems. The poem is called Questions About Angels, and the idea is how many angels does it take, how many angels can fit dancing on the head of a pin. So I just really like that concept and the idea, so that's kind of where that came from. The cover art, which you can see a good image of there next to you, it was done by a former faculty member of Southern Utah University, Jay Merriweather, who's an amazing designer, painter, artist of all different kinds. And I've collaborated with him on a couple of different projects, and I just thought that it would be really great to have somebody that I know doing some kind of art that had some photography in it and then also some other aspects to it as well. And so we talked about this concept. This is actually, I think, the third draft of the design cover, so that might be something that these guys want to ask about or something. But basically, it's some photographs that were taken of me, and then he went and kind of touched it up and did some extra animation and that kind of thing with it. So that's kind of where that is, and the different marimba bars and things like that. So just kind of starting with the process, and I mean, you guys can jump in at any time. I mean, you get this idea like, okay, I want to have a CD, and you start thinking, well, what can you do? And a lot of people think like, what's the first step? And I think for me, at least, the first step is really coming up with repertoire that you really believe in and repertoire that you really want to do. So I've been thinking about solo repertoire for a long time, and of course I've done a lot of solo pieces and a lot of solo recitals, but as I started to kind of really get a group of pieces that I was really passionate about, then I kind of thought, okay, well, it's time to record a CD. So that's kind of where that came up. So deciding that, I originally thought I was going to do the whole thing self-published or self-produced, which meant that I started everything not imagining that I was going to be associated with a record label. As it turns out, I am associated with a record label. This is being produced and has been produced by Delos Records, is distributed by Naxos, and maybe that's some questions that we can get into as well. But one of the first things that I wanted to do is figure out what the deal with rights, when you have rights for a CD and if you want to record, because of course, when you purchase a piece of music, you're purchasing the right to perform it because you're buying the music. But in terms of mechanical licenses or audio licenses dealing with ASCAP and BMI and all those things, I really had to find out quite a bit about what to do with that. So the first question probably is, what licenses do you need in order to record? And one of the things that you really have to think about is, especially if you're self-producing, is the mechanical license. That's the kind of license that you're talking about. There's all different kinds of musical production licenses, but the mechanical license is what you're trying to get. And what I found is that you need to get that from the publisher. Not specifically from the composer, but from the publisher if the music is published. And so on this CD, I was dealing with a few different publishers. One was C. Allen Publications, another was Edition Switzer, another one was Promethean Editions, which is way across the world, and then the other was Norsk, which is also in Europe. So the only American company that I was dealing with was C. Allen Publications. And each one of those publishers has a different setup. So I would write to them and I'd say, I want to make a recording. What do I need to get a mechanical license? In some cases, if I knew the publisher or they're a smaller, like in a publisher, and they really want the promotion, they'll say, don't pay us anything. We're thrilled for you to be doing it. Just send us some CDs. And then in other situations, there was quite an extensive contract where you have to write exactly what's going on the CD, how many CDs do you expect to print, how much you expect to sell them for, all those kinds of things. And then they calculate an amount for what you need to pay them basically for that number, that piece that's on there. So in the case of, say, C. Allen Publications, the very first piece on the CD, Abaca, is from them. And so they had a long contract and wanted to know all these details, and then I sent it back, and then they sent me the contract back and said, okay, then you need to give us this amount of money, and then that will cover this pressing of this CD. And so then you have the mechanical license to continue forward. So
Did you have to worry about any, like I know it sounds a lot like when you get rights for a play.
yeah.
Like, because, that's what you're talking about. Do they care if you change the music at all? Like, do you have to tell them I'm not playing this repeat or something?
That's a great question. It brings up lots of things. Like, for example, plays are also different because you also need the licensing, like in music, you need from ASCAP and BMI, which has to do with the location of where you're doing it too. In recording for music, you don't need that. The deal with changing is a tricky one because you're not, if the contract doesn't require you to send an advance copy for the composer to peruse, then you are not obligated to. So you don't have to. And I know a lot of situations where composers are like, yeah, it's great that I have this, but there's wrong notes or there's parts that are different or whatever. And that does happen. In my case, none of my contracts or interactions required me to really necessarily get in touch with the composers first, so I didn't. Although also knowing these works so well and knowing other recordings of the work so well, I was trying to make them really exact to the letter, at the same time. So that is a chance that you take. You don't really know. Like, I mean, this is not officially released, so the composers don't have it yet. So I don't officially know how anybody feels about it. And generally speaking, in the percussion world, composers are so excited for their music to be out there that it's a great thing to have your piece recorded at all is fantastic, because I mean, all these pieces, there's so many pieces and there's only so many CDs. So to have all that music on a CD is really great. But so I'm hoping they'll all be really happy with it. But if your contract doesn't require you to contact them, you don't really need to. So some people do change things, but at the same time, I sort of feel, why would you change things? If you're choosing to do this composer's piece, then why would you want to change it, in that way? So I try to do everything right to the letter of what was on the music at all times.
And what was that other license you were talking about? You're talking like a sound license and a mechanical license?
Yeah, so the mechanical license is what you get for this. But in music, and some of you may be aware of this, in music, like if you go into a mall or if you go into any location or theater or something like that, theaters hold a license from, and I think I can't remember the name offhand, production license, there's a specific word for it. And that's we have two music licensing companies. ASCAP is one of them and BMI is the other. And almost every composer around in the world, even from the pop people, even from like pop composers, pop singers who hold the rights to their songs, are in one of those two catalogs. So if you go and look on ASCAP.com or BMI or whatever, you'll see their whole list, and it's every kind of composer imaginable: pop, rock, classical, whatever. And so theoretically, in order for those people to make money, one of the ways those people make money is that if a radio station is on, or if music is playing, or if something is playing in a mall, or you use something in a play, or universities, for example, when we play concerts, our licenses are covered by the university. So all of that music, those composers get a little bit of money theoretically for that stuff being done. Now they're not categorizing it, but because the institution or the mall or the whatever is paying ASCAP or BMI annual fees, then they calculate that out to their composers and kind of give it to them. But for recording a CD, you don't have to deal with that. You really just need to deal with the mechanical license.
So you didn't have to deal with BMI or ASCAP?
No,
You
no,
just deal
because
directly
I'm
with the
not
publisher?
performing it, you know, and as a soloist, I mean, it's one thing, you don't really have to worry. Like if I get hired to play at a museum or at a hall or at a school, I never worry about that because I assume that that's being covered by the presenting organization. So the concert hall itself is paying their ASCAP or BMI fees every year, or the university is paying their ASCAP or BMI fees, so we're covered that way. So as an individual, you don't really have to deal with them that much unless you're a composer and you want to be represented. And then, you know, once you get to a certain point, you definitely want to be associated with ASCAP or BMI.